The war in Ukraine, ignited by Russia's 2022 invasion, has devastated lives, displaced millions, and shattered cities. The conflict has not only brought immense suffering to the Ukrainian people but has also sent shockwaves across the globe. Families have been torn apart, homes reduced to rubble, and the once vibrant cities now lie in ruins. The human cost is immeasurable, with countless lives lost and many more forever altered. It's Europe's largest land conflict since World War II, testing the resolve of global alliances and the principles of sovereignty. The echoes of past wars resonate as nations grapple with the implications of this modern-day conflict. NATO and other international bodies are once again at the forefront, navigating the delicate balance between intervention and diplomacy. Ukrainian civilians endure relentless attacks, while Russia faces heavy casualties and economic isolation. The daily reality for many involves seeking refuge in bomb shelters, mourning lost loved ones, and struggling with shortages of basic necessities. Meanwhile, Russia grapples with the toll of war, both in terms of human lives and the economic sanctions that have isolated it from much of the world. The conflict has become a grinding war of attrition, with both sides locked in a bloody struggle across a vast front line. The landscape is marred by trenches and fortifications, reminiscent of battles from a bygone era. Soldiers on both sides face harsh conditions, with the muddy battlefields and constant threat of attack defining their daily existence. International support, especially from the US and Europe, has enabled Ukraine to resist, but the war's duration has strained resources and unity. Military aid continues to flow, but the prolonged conflict has tested the patience and resolve of Ukraine's allies. Refugee centers in neighboring countries are overwhelmed, highlighting the broader humanitarian crisis. As Russia gains ground in the Donbas, the world's attention turns to Alaska, where a high-stakes US-Russia summit offers a faint hope for peace. Diplomatic efforts are intensifying, with leaders from both nations seeking a resolution to the conflict. The outcome of these talks could shape the future of the region and the broader international order. The future of Ukraine, European stability, and the credibility of the international system now hang in the balance. The decisions made in the coming days and weeks will have far-reaching consequences, not just for Ukraine, but for the entire world. The stakes are high, and the path to peace remains uncertain. On August 15, 2025, Anchorage, Alaska became the stage for a pivotal US-Russia summit. President Trump and President Putin met face-to-face for the first time since the invasion, signaling a possible diplomatic breakthrough. Alaska's selection as neutral ground was symbolic, a bridge between continents and a fresh start. Trump's direct personal approach marked a shift in U.S. strategy, while Putin saw an opportunity to reassert Russia's global role. Behind the scenes, secrecy and protocol breaches fueled speculation about the talks' substance. Despite controversies, the summit's goal was clear: explore a path to peace in Ukraine. High-level officials, including Secretary of State Rubio and Secretary of Defense Hegseth, underscored the seriousness of the negotiations. The proposals that emerged would soon send shockwaves through Kyiv, Brussels, and beyond. At the Alaska summit, Putin presented a peace plan that would reshape Ukraine's future. The proposal rejected an immediate ceasefire, demanding continued fighting until a final agreement, putting Ukraine under immense pressure. Russia's demands included official status for the Russian language, security guarantees for the Russian Orthodox Church, and permanent Ukrainian neutrality, barring NATO membership. These terms would force Ukraine to negotiate under fire, risking more territory and lives. The plan's cultural and political demands struck at the heart of Ukrainian identity. Russia's insistence on neutrality and territorial concessions aimed to keep Ukraine out of Western alliances. The package asked Ukraine to sacrifice land, sovereignty, and its future security for a chance at peace. The most painful part of Putin's proposal was the demand for Ukraine to cede all of Donetsk and Luhansk, territories not fully under Russian control. In exchange, Russia vaguely offered to withdraw from small occupied areas elsewhere and freeze front lines in the south, keeping a land bridge to Crimea. For Ukraine, this meant formal dismemberment and a devastating loss of industrial heartland. The new borders would be hard to defend, leaving Ukraine vulnerable to future attacks. Analysts warned that this would let Russia regroup and threaten again. President Zelensky has declared Ukraine's territorial integrity non-negotiable. Surrendering land would be seen as a betrayal of those who fought and died. Yet this demand was placed at the center of the peace plan, making agreement nearly impossible. After the high-stakes summit, President Trump emerged before the press, declaring what he called a major diplomatic breakthrough. He told reporters that a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine was not just possible, but imminent, closer than ever before in the long and bitter conflict. Trump claimed that even the thorniest issues, like land transfers and security guarantees, were now on the table, with both sides showing new willingness to compromise. The mood among diplomats was cautiously optimistic, as negotiators worked late into the night to hammer out the details. This announcement signaled a dramatic shift in U.S. policy. Instead of simply backing Ukraine's defense, the United States was now actively brokering a settlement, one that, critics argued, seemed to lean toward Moscow's terms and priorities. Trump's public embrace of Russia's no ceasefire before a deal position was seen as a major concession, effectively validating Moscow's hardline negotiating tactics and giving them leverage at the bargaining table. In a further sign of goodwill toward Russia, Trump announced a pause on new sanctions, temporarily easing economic pressure on Moscow while talks continued. This move was controversial, sparking debate in Washington and among America's allies. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Zelensky faced mounting pressure. Trump insisted that Ukraine must accept the terms of the deal, leaving Zelensky caught between the demands of his most powerful ally and the interests of his own nation's sovereignty and security. Under the proposed agreement, U.S. funding for Ukraine's defense would be cut off, replaced only by indirect support through European partners and NATO. This marked a significant reduction in direct American involvement on the ground. Critics, both at home and abroad, warned that this approach prioritized a quick diplomatic win over Ukraine's long-term security. Many feared it could set a dangerous precedent, encouraging future aggression by rewarding force with negotiation. As the world watched these developments unfold, opinions were sharply divided. Some hoped this was the first real step toward peace, while others worried it was simply rewarding aggression and undermining international norms. The Alaska proposal shocked Kyiv, seen as a betrayal and a legal impossibility under Ukraine's constitution. Zelensky faces a dire choice: reject the deal and risk losing U.S. support, or accept and face national outrage. Ukrainian officials view the plan as a trap, leaving the country vulnerable to future Russian attacks. Freezing the front lines and ceding Donbas would create an indefensible border and solidify Russia's grip on key regions. Analysts warn this would institutionalize a frozen conflict, not real peace. For Ukrainians, surrendering land is a betrayal of their sacrifice and identity. Any leader accepting these terms would face massive backlash and political crisis. The proposal asks Ukraine to give up its soul to save its body, a price most Ukrainians refuse to pay. Europe's response to the Alaska summit revealed deep divisions. Western powers welcomed renewed diplomacy but warned against rewarding Russian aggression, insisting on strong security guarantees for Ukraine. They threatened more sanctions if Russia continued occupying Ukrainian territory. Meanwhile, Nordic and Baltic nations, fearing for their own security, rejected any deal limiting Ukraine's alliances and vowed to increase support for Kyiv. This split threatens European unity, a key pillar of the response to Russia's invasion. The debate now centers on whether to accept painful compromises for stability or defend Ukraine's sovereignty at all costs. The outcome will shape not just Ukraine's fate, but the future of European security. The Russian proposal is riddled with flaws that could make peace fragile and short-lived. By refusing a pre-deal ceasefire, Russia keeps violence as leverage, undermining trust and prolonging suffering. Security guarantees for Ukraine are vague and exclude NATO membership, raising doubts about enforcement. The plan rewards Russian aggression, setting a dangerous precedent for future conflicts. Russia could use new territories as military footholds, threatening renewed war. The deal ignores justice for war crimes, offering no accountability for atrocities committed during the conflict. Many Ukrainians believe peace without justice is impossible. The proposal is a transactional exchange, ignoring the deeper wounds that must be healed for lasting peace. The Alaska summit has forced a global reckoning, shifting the focus from helping Ukraine win to brokering an uneasy peace. The stakes have never been higher, as the world's most powerful nations gather to decide the fate of a conflict that has already reshaped the global order. The atmosphere is tense, with every word and gesture scrutinized for signs of compromise or confrontation. Behind closed doors, diplomats weigh the costs of continued war against the risks of a fragile settlement. Tomorrow's meeting between Trump and Zelensky will be pivotal. Can Ukraine persuade the U.S. to reconsider, or will it face pressure to accept the deal? The world is watching as these two leaders navigate a diplomatic minefield, each representing not just their own nations, but the hopes and fears of millions. The outcome of their talks could set the tone for the next phase of the conflict and determine whether Ukraine's sovereignty is preserved or compromised. The outcome could either deepen rifts among allies or lead to a fragile, unstable peace that rewards aggression. NATO's unity is already under strain, with member states divided over how far to go in supporting Ukraine. Some fear that conceding too much will embolden future aggressors, while others argue that endless war serves no one. If Ukraine rejects the plan, the war may intensify and Western unity could fracture. The front line could see renewed violence, and the alliance that once stood firm may begin to unravel, leaving Ukraine more isolated than ever. If the deal is forced through, it risks sowing resentment and instability in Ukraine. Many Ukrainians may see it as a betrayal, fueling protests and deepening divisions within the country. The scars of war and compromise could linger for generations. The Alaska proposal exposes the brutal realities of power politics and the difficulty of achieving a just peace. Every move is calculated, every concession weighed against long-term consequences. The world's leaders are playing a high-stakes game, where the lives of millions hang in the balance. Leaders now face choices between different kinds of devastating costs. There are no easy answers, only trade-offs between security, justice, and the hope for lasting stability. Each path forward carries its own risks and moral dilemmas. The world watches, hoping for wisdom, but bracing for a tragic compromise. As the summit unfolds, ordinary people everywhere hold their breath, aware that the decisions made here will echo far beyond the negotiating table, shaping the future of Europe and the world for years to come.